All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here for part two of our training session. Today, you are going to hear from Dr. Betsy Doon, accommodations and modifications. I know that we are going to have a lot of folks continuing to join us, but Sandy and I will be keeping an eye on the chat. And Betsy, we'll hand it over to you. We're very excited that you all are joining us back.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren, and I appreciate that. And I really have a tough act to follow after watching Miss DeWitt yesterday. She did such a great job. There will be a little bit of overlap, but that distributive practice of reviewing information is so helpful and hopefully will help solidify some of this. So I just wanted to share that today is about accommodations and modifications, but really my goal is to help you understand that when we meet the needs of all students, by making accommodations and modifications, then we better serve all of our students, and that's the goal. So let's see. Maybe it won't go forward. So brief introductions. Today's agenda, I just want to introduce myself briefly. We're going to talk about the concept of the least dangerous assumption. And I think that will ground this whole presentation, that theoretical aspect of why we look at the least dangerous assumption. We're going to define and provide examples of accommodations and modifications. I'm going to introduce the UDL framework. Universal Design for Learning is an entire class on itself, so I'm not going to do much, but I will introduce it. I know Ms. DeWitt introduced it yesterday briefly as well, so we'll tie into that, and I'll provide you some resources. But again, it's an entire new class, and that's something we can work out with Ms. Almadea later. I'm going to introduce something called the teaching heuristic, and hope that you can use that as a way to frame how to teach and when you're developing your lesson plan. So taking all this information together and putting it in a framework in which you can use to plan your lessons. And then we'll open up, address some of your questions from yesterday, and open it up for questions in general. So that's the agenda for today. Does anybody have anything they need to add? And you're going to have to call out because I cannot see the chat. If you have questions, just stop me and call out. Great. So what I'd like you to do right now, oh, I'm not sure, sorry. First, I just tell a little bit about myself. My name, again, is Elizabeth Doon. I go by Betsy. I coordinate our teacher certification programs and exceptional student education. So all of the individuals going through the College of Education that receive certification in ESE go through our programs. We have an undergraduate and a master's program. So I coordinate those programs. But I also work with our mentor teachers out in the field. So those are the individuals who host our students when they're going through their program of study. And unlike most programs, our students get some intensive work in the field. They're in the field every semester, and it's a little bit overwhelming for them. So we work at teachers at all levels, where they're there 1 day a week, 4 days a week, full time, and then also working as teacher assistants. Just something unique. My last publication was on virtual mentoring. So it's kind of neat that we're doing this, but I had a project that I was running a course out of Ghana, West Africa, and COVID hit. And, our students were planning to do service learning over there. And so I worked with mentors. Actually, they were like graduate students in Ghana, and they helped my students plan and implement some virtual projects. And so that we wrote a paper on that, and that was really kind of interesting. But I wanted to share one of my most unique publications was on therapy dogs. My colleague and I had read a lot about this kind of wonder event that they found that kids with ASD were really responding well to therapy dogs. And a lot of people were getting real excited about this concept. And so we thought, well, let's, figure out if this is, if this truly is the end all and be all of helping kids with ASD. And like with everything, and so I guess this is why I'm framing this today. With everything, yes, therapy dogs were very helpful for some kids, moderately helpful for all, and actually caused anxiety for a few. So while the therapy dog in the classroom was a unique idea and very cool for some kids, it's not for everybody. So looking for a magic bullet, one strategy is not going to work. And that's the whole goal of today, is to see that, we have a lot of things that we have to try, and we have to have that depth. And as teachers, you already know that. You have your deep pockets filled with tools that you have to use. And I also facilitate teacher trainings in Malaysia. So I've got a little bit of experience doing some teacher trainings abroad. And again, another reason I posted that is I wanted to hit the importance of when I went to Malaysia. As you saw yesterday, we have 13, and some say 14 in the state of Florida, categories of disabilities in the United States. In other areas of the world, that's not the case. You don't necessarily have those 14 categories. So when I went to Malaysia and did teacher training, they said, "Oh, we need to know what is wrong with our student before you can teach us any strategies." And I kind of flipped that coin and said, you know what? You'll find out what is wrong with the student based on the tools that you have. And so that time in Malaysia, in particular, they had done a lot of trainings on dyslexia. So their proportion of students with dyslexia went out the roof because that was the tool they had. And so they wanted to know what was wrong with these other kids if they didn't have dyslexia. And my goal is to say, let's look at strategies that work for all students. And yes, some of our students have deficits and all of our students have assets. And so looking at those together is a way to approach how we work with our students. And so I wanted to hit that because I do think it's important. I'm not going to tell you what's wrong with anybody because I don't think there's any wrong. We learn differently, we think differently, and we're neurodivergent. So I'd like to focus on that. Additionally, I've taught English and math in Ghana, West Africa for 2 years and love that experience. So some cultural experiences. I've taught students labeled emotionally behavior. Well, I was going to let you pull that out. EBD, which you learned yesterday, is emotionally behavior disordered. And I worked with the EBD students in a residential wilderness program. And that was a really cool experience because our students lived in the woods and they were totally removed from the environments in which they had not succeeded. So in school and urban centers and all the places where they had trouble and they got into trouble with the law and trouble in school, we pulled them out and put them in a wilderness environment and did some peer therapy with them and all kinds of therapeutic, the whole camp was a therapeutic milieu and really helped to bring them into understanding and talking through their issues. I've served as an ESE specialist in a middle school. So while not a high school, my work in that camp was a lot of high school students. The middle school students, I think, are almost as challenging or more so, their behavior. And so in that environment, I learned not only to support the teachers because they needed a lot. They needed students taken out of their classroom and for a reprieve. They needed a little bit of support, but the students also needed support. And I bring that up because oftentimes I've found for teachers that have been at the school for a while and maybe had served a sibling of one of the kids, then if that sibling, the younger sibling comes to the school, that poor kid was already targeted as a bad child because they had such a go round with their sibling. And so I really want to caution against each one is unique and learning to see our students for who they are. And then finally, I've supervised pre-service teachers in the field and supported and evaluated them. So that's a little bit of my experience and who I am. So right now, I know we don't have time to get to know all of you, but I thought if you could just post one thing in the chat, one unique experience or piece of knowledge that you bring to your teaching. And so I'd just like to hear from you. And let me see if I can see who the...
I'll call them out as they come up if that makes it easier.
Yes, that'd be great.
I'm kind of keeping a running list of questions and comments. Somebody made a comment that they really like the part of most unique publication on therapy dogs.
Oh,
tune.
Thank you.
And just a quick reminder for folks that are with us in this session. I know you're joining us. We're really getting a lot happening. Please make sure, unless you're asking or responding, that you are muted. It helps with the feedback for all of our participants.
Okay, Carl Burke responds, combination of counselor and teacher as high school life skills education.
Awesome.
Life skills educator, sorry. The ability to foster a positive learning environment.
Oh, I love that. That's key, and taking that time early on to do that as you start the school year is so important.
Oh, I love this. Angelica Williams says that the knowledge she brings to teaching is that everybody can learn. Everyone can learn. They just learn differently.
Angelica, that's perfect. That fits in totally with what we're trying to pass on here. Hands
Um,
on. I love that. Math
Dalen
emphasis.
Martin likes incorporating lessons with songs related to the topic.
Oh,
And then
awesome.
hands-on application. Oh, they're coming now.
Yeah.
So hands-on application in the real world. That's from Pedro Garcia. Miriam Chanlandero, I apologize if I'm messing up on the names, uses manipulatives in math class. And Ethel says that hands-on activity, catering for all learning styles. Oh, this is the next one. Florita Castillo says maintaining you are loved in capitals, attitude among our students. Oh,
Student-centered approach, 17 years of science experience, a safe environment. Oh my gosh, our kids need the classroom to feel safe. I mean, they spend 8 hours a day with you and they need to feel safe and loved. They need to have a sense of community, so they want to be there. These are all wonderful. So you have so much that you bring to this and to your teaching, and I really appreciate you taking the time to go through those. Thank you. If you see anything else that just pops out, let me know. So I just wanted to share this quote by Pablo Picasso. The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. So once you find your gift and you give it away, and each of you shared that gift that you have in teaching, and you're giving it away to your children, your students every day. And I love that. So thank you. That's awesome. Okay. This. So one of the participants yesterday posted that we are not formally trained in special education and we apply only the limited strategies we learn along our journey. And while we do our best to implement, and I know you do your best, so I'm not doubting that, these methods in the classroom, we recognize the need for more in-depth and specialized training or even certification. And that's absolutely awesome. And if you want to get certified in ESE, that's something we would, at some point we can, talk about later, but right now you're in the classroom and you've got these students. So what are you going to do? And we're going to learn a little bit today about things that we can do with students that we know a little bit about, and we can start figuring out how to meet their needs. This is the concept, though, that I would like to include as the whole the whole crux of what we're doing in terms of this juxtaposition of the least dangerous assumption. So this assumption is that in the absence of any conclusive data, educational decisions should be based on assumptions, which, if they're not right, will have the least dangerous effect on the likelihood that students will be able to function independently as adults. And I'd like somebody to unclick their mic and kind of share out what they think that means. Would anybody like to take a shot at
Hi,
understanding?
good morning.
Go ahead.
Pedro Garcia here from San Pedro
Hi,
High
Pedro.
School and San Pedro Junior College. So I'm a mathematician, so I understand the importance of data. And if there is no data, then therefore there is no where there is no evidence.
I
And
love it,
hence then we
Pedro.
cannot do almost anything. So in here, and one of the other things that we never want to do in mathematics is assumptions. It's very, very difficult to work with them because then all that we're doing is we're approximating, and these students, we cannot approximate a student. That is unheard of. So if we don't have the data-driven mentality, we cannot do anything, in other words. So therefore, we would probably treat these students hostile, and therefore, well, we would do a disservice rather than a service to the student.
Oh, you've hit it on the nail on the head. That's exactly right. We don't want to do a disservice by making assumptions because we read a label. And so we read a label that a student has an intellectual disability or autism. And so we just assume that they can't learn as much. Oh my gosh, that was a great answer. And I've never thought about it from the mathematician's point of view, but I love how you framed that. So thank you so much. Great response. So exactly according to what Pedro said, so if we accept this prevailing paradigm that students, have this disability, that leads us to low expectations for our students. It often requires us to create segregated programs because we say that they can't learn with their peers because they learn slower or they are not capable. And it also creates a limited focus on what we teach them. And if we limit what we teach them, then they have less options in their future. And if we so that there's less options, this creates a strand of society who is unable to move forward. So we want to go forward and say that if a student does not learn, the quality of the instruction should be questioned before the student's ability to learn. And so that's the goal of today, to always look at the quality of our instruction and make sure that we are doing everything that we need to support our students. So thank you so much, Pedro. That was very helpful. So why the least dangerous assumption? Again, just to repeat, we have to have high expectations because that makes a difference in what our students are able to achieve. Teacher expectations influence our students. So when we understand that, why not have high expectations for all? Then they meet us where they can. Another thing I wanted to unpack, I know that yesterday, Ms. DeWitt showed you that bell curve, that IQ is on the bell curve. Well, it's not a destiny. It doesn't mean that it's static. And there are things that, IQ has some wiggle room in there, but we shouldn't make assumptions based on an IQ that could be faulty, taken on a bad day, taken in the wrong language, or because a student was deprived early on in life. For example, they may not have had tools at home for learning. So we want to think about that. And then think about our students who have communication challenges. Not talking is not the same as not having something to say. So we need to make sure that we're providing our students with the means for communication. So that is why we're looking at the least dangerous assumption and why this is important. So all students have instructional needs. Our students with varying exceptionalities have more, they have needs that also should be considered. So our students with special needs may require additional time, not only to learn, but to practice. Do we build opportunity to practice within our lesson plans? They need to understand that they may learn, that as teachers, we might need to understand that they may learn less or retain less. And I've seen lots of teachers who say, gosh, they had it yesterday and today they don't have it. That distributive practice of practice over and over time is needed for our students with intellectual disabilities whose IQ may be a little lower or who did not have the same opportunities at home. Our students with special needs also benefit from explicit and systematic instruction. So making sure that our instruction is clear, that we use visuals. And I know yesterday, Ms. DeWitt talked a lot about our graphic organizers. Those are part of those visuals that support learning. Not only visual cues, but visual graphic organizers can make our lessons more explicit. They need ongoing practice and interaction with the content. So that ongoing practice, if I haven't had exposure to it, the more practice I get, the more I can retain and build my learning schema. And then they need opportunities to apply these skills in natural settings. And I think as a mathematician, Pedro, you could understand this. I remember being in high school and I was excelling in trigonometry, but I had no connection to my schema. I had no idea where this would be applied. So applying content in the natural setting as much as possible is important for cementing that learning. I can tell you all about sine and cosine waves, and all I know is they have something to do with radio waves or something, but I can't apply it in a real world setting. And that would be more helpful to that knowledge that I have about that. So connecting it to the schema, and we do that through putting it in context of how it should be used. And we can make sure that things happen by doing some task analysis and some sequencing of those skills. And then we need to make sure that we have reliable supports for learning, so learning in that context. And those are what all students have, these instructional needs, but they need to be emphasized for our students with special needs. Yesterday, there was a question about making things equitable, or, you know, that there was a question in the class, what if a student or somebody says that's unfair? And so I wanted to just share this, that, you know, if we give everybody the same thing and they don't need it, then that's a waste of resources. But if we give the students the resources or the supports they need, that is equity. Equality is everybody gets the same thing. You notice I wear glasses to see. If I said, oh, that helps my vision, so let's give everybody in the classroom new glasses, that would be a waste of resources, but it would be equality. I mean, everybody could have glasses, but equity would be providing only those students who have, you know, vision needs, glasses, those who have hearing needs, hearing aids, and then those who have motor needs, those things. So making sure that we're providing according to what our students need. And that's what accommodations are all about. We want to help students learn the same material as their peers at the same expectation level. So with my glasses, I can learn the same level because I can now read the print. And so that is the point of an accommodation. A modification is used for students who are far behind their peers, and we need to change the content or the curriculum to make sure that they can have access to the content in the classroom. In Florida and in the US, we do this through something called access points. So it's a curriculum that we have. There's a series of standards, and the access points are the same essence of that standard, but at a much reduced level of complexity, so that our students can engage with that content, but their complexity level is much lower than the expectation of our typical developing peers. So what's the difference, and why are accommodations and modifications important? And I think you guys have some guided notes that you can be working on while we go through this. Christy, have they been have access to these right now? If you do have access, please follow along and use your guided notes, because they'll be helpful for the final assignment. Okay, so what's the difference and why are they important? Accommodations, as I mentioned, are changes to the materials, the instruction, or the assessments that we provide students, making sure that they are able to fully access the information and to demonstrate their learning. So those are what accommodations are. So for example, we might provide testing accommodations, and this includes the format of a test. So I can provide a test in large print to a student who has visual impairments. That same test, and I think this will go to somebody's point yesterday, I could put for a student who has ADHD, if I had a math test, for example, with 4 problems on it in large print, there could be 20 problems on the test, and most students can take 10 problems. I typically make it a 2-page test and do 10 problems, 10 problems. Well, that 4 problems I can make it large print for my students with visual impairments. I can also be less distracting for my student with ADHD, because they don't get overwhelmed page by page. So reducing the number of problems on the page might also be helpful for a student with ADHD. And so while I make that accommodation, somebody yesterday said it's very, very difficult, providing students choice. I don't call anybody out. I said, here's some large print for those that need it. And after a time, you're not wasting materials, because you realize the students that will need it and those that prefer the regular print. So that preference and that choice might be helpful. But those tests do not affect what is tested, or what the students are able to do and measure what they can do. It provides a different way for them to access that material. So again, they're expected to learn at the same level of proficiency as their peers. Now, modifications, on the other hand, change the instruction, the curriculum, or the assessments that the students perform on. And this expectation is typically for students who we've tried all these accommodations and they're not working, so we'll look at this. And I think yesterday, Ms. Almeida said something about looking at these students as red flags. So students in your class who you've accommodated, you've tried a range of accommodations and they're not working, they're still not floundering a little bit. These might be students that you flag for the need for modifications or special education services in the future. But again, we want to make sure that we've tried a series of things, and going back to that least dangerous assumption, making sure that we do not flag a student too early because the instruction has been faulty. We want to make sure that we've done the best instruction for them and provided them the best means so that we're not making a mistake or an assumption about our students. So accommodations are the how students access the materials, the content, the testing. Modifications, on the other hand, are the what. So we change the what, we change what they learn. And accommodations, we're providing some support on how our students can learn. So I hope that's clear. So how do we remember all the different accommodations that we can provide students? In the US, we have this thing called a malt. It's like a milkshake, but it's a malt because it has a little malt powder in it. So I have a visual of a malt to ingrain that in your head. And then also to help you remember the acronym for the different ways, or the mnemonic, the different ways that we can accommodate learners. So if I look at this malt, I say, oh, malt, M-A-L-T. We can change the methods and materials to support a student. Do I change how I'm teaching and what I'm, the materials that I provide them? That's one way that I can accommodate my learners. I can also change the assignments and the assessments, not the content of it, but how I provide it to my learners. I can make some changes to my learning environment. And again, this one's very obvious. I think somebody said earlier that physical disabilities are some of the easiest. So making sure that my aisles are wide enough in my classroom for a wheelchair, those kinds of things, but also maybe some seating. I can look at time demands and scheduling. So the T is time demands and scheduling options for my students. And then I can look at special communication systems. And this is really important for our students. Just because they're not able to verbalize doesn't mean they don't have something to say or they're not intelligent. So we need to keep that in mind. So if I want to look at ways to accommodate students, I can think, MALTs, methods and materials, assignments and assessments, learning, time, and special communication systems. So what methods and materials can we change? We can provide some prompts for each step of a routine. And I love this. You think of students with ADHD, they might forget the order of things, or they might get, just be too disorganized in their mind. I know our students with ASD love a visual schedule. So providing some of those prompts, visual cues, adapted to materials, switch activated devices for them to access those materials. Those are different ways we can provide methods and materials. For assignments and assessments, so another way for assessing, I can have a student who has poor writing skills, in illegible handwriting because of fine motor problems, or the goal is not to test their handwriting in that particular case, but it's to test, did they understand the story? Then I can have them tell me the story, dictate it into a computer with speech to text or something like that. So I'm not changing the expectation unless it was a writing assignment, and then I wouldn't use this. But otherwise, I can have them tell me to show me that they comprehend the story rather than write it. I can provide an alternative to writing might include, for our young students, sometimes we allow them, again, if they have significant disabilities, we can have a choice of 3, and they can use a because of that fine motor skills, a big stamp to select the correct answers. They can use picture cues. And again, while we think of younger kids with this, and I know you're high school teachers, I've seen high school teachers adapt these things and make them appropriate for high school students. But also the specialized computer software is another way to look at that. For the learning environment, some of our students need some positioning and mobility equipment. A lot of our students benefit from sitting on a ball if they have ADHD, or moving around, or using the bands on a chair. Some students need to be in smaller groups to receive their instruction because of the distractions. And another thing that we can do, and we'll get into this in the next couple of days, is that behavior management plan, looking at plans that support all learners versus are reactive. We want to be proactive, and that's the whole point of positive behavior support. So being proactive in our management plans to ensure that we have strategies to support all our learners. One thing about school, and when you mentioned you all have that 7-period day, those time demands and your scheduling are really, really tight. So what are ways that we can keep our students on task and remind them of the time demands of their schedule? So some things we can provide, again, a picture schedule. And again, in high school, that's going to look a little different than in elementary school, but we've seen different ways to provide picture schedules. We can provide some additional time to complete. But I always want to make sure that we recognize that an accommodation that provides additional time should be given sparingly, because you want to think about this. If a child understands the task and does not have a processing, auditory, visual processing, or if they don't have a fine motor skill that creates the need for more time issue, then you don't want to give them additional time. And I say that because then students with additional time and they're just distractible can start then distracting their peers. So additional time needs to be thoughtful and thinking about how. But again, some of our students with ADHD, for example, need to be like in the zone before they can start working. So maybe providing them an opportunity to hand it in the morning or at a different time. And then more opportunities to practice. Again, this is really important. So thinking about ways we could do this, having students go home and practice with an older sibling that you may have taught in the years past, or, you know, taking some practice sheets and having peers work together at a later time, just as a support system would be ways to do that. The S stands for our special communication systems. We use communication boards or some devices that students who are nonverbal can respond with pretty easily. And those might include picture exchange systems, just some quick one-word response tools that they can use. Some of our students might use sign language. Others, might need to use Braille. So we need to have a system where we can support our students. And then the all areas, sometimes in the US, we have personal assistants for students. So they might have, our medically fragile students might have one-on-one aides. They might have a personal assistant for somebody who's behavior disordered. And then some assistive technology is always helpful. And the technology has advanced so much that all students benefit from the technology that we have. Sometimes a little too much. We have to take the devices away at times to ensure that they can interact in the real world as well. So just a review, accommodations do not change the content. They do not change the expectations, and they do not reduce the risk. So once you know that and you have that in your mind, you can address that question. That's unfair. No, it's not fair. I'm not changing the content. I'm not changing the expectations, and I'm not reducing the requirements. And those examples are many, that Braille for our vision impaired students who need materials to read, text-to-speech software. Again, that technology is amazing. It helps our students. The extended time on tests for those that need that. Advanced organizers, like the sheet that I hope you have in front of you. I'm not sure that you have it, to take notes on this. Testing in a separate room for our students who are easily distracted. That's very helpful. Allowing typed responses and an alternative to handwritten responses when necessary for students who have some fine motor skill issues. So those are a few.
Dr. June, we have a
Yes.
few questions.
Excellent.
All right. So
That's exactly where
Someone asked, about the number of students per class, and there were 2 responses, and this might be something for Miss Almeida.
okay.
The responses were, I believe the number of students depends on the teacher and how well he or she can handle them all. And then someone else said there's a mandatory students per classroom. Miss Almeida, if you're there and can respond to that question about number of students per class, if there's a mandatory number or not. The next question is, someone said she keeps hearing providing additional time and asks how. So you might want to respond to that one. How do you provide extra time in a time day?
And again, so that totally depends. I don't want to apply additional time unless I understand that that student has some kind of processing issue where they actually need the extra time, because I do not want them to start disturbing others. But for a student who actually has a processing, I can break that assignment in half and give them opportunity to complete it at home, complete it, the next day, come in early, provide time at lunch. There's many strategies, and I understand you have a very complex schedule, 7 periods in a day. So that's a little trickier, but there are ways to do it. And we can work it out with, with the student. Again, if you get the students buy-in by asking them what ways that you can help do this, that's the best. Always start with the student. Like, okay, I realize you need a little bit more time. If I give you, would you like to come at the end of the day for 5 minutes and work on it? Would you like to come early in the morning? Would you like to come at your lunch period? Can I give you this to take home and work on it? And with computers and everything else, that's a little trickier. But if you help the student see that this is benefiting them, that's when I adjust that. There was another question.
I don't know if somebody's jumping in for a
Sandy,
question.
while we're doing this, I'm going to go ahead and post. I have a Padlet up here, and I'm not sure it's going to work. But if you, I move this, so students could post on the Padlet why we're talking. That might be helpful to speed things along. So I'm going to answer questions, but if you can access the Padlet with this QR code right now.
Just a reminder to folks, please make sure you're muted if you're not trying to actively ask a question. And there is someone, while folks are taking a couple minutes to get to this Padlet, Pedro has his hand raised. So if we could.
Pedro, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so I have one question based on grading, because I'm listening to the different accommodations versus modification, and I'm still a little bit doubtful in terms of the grading scheme for each. If I'm modifying something, will the grading system change, or if I am accommodating for something, will the system for grading change? That's just
That's a great question, Pedro. And so what I'm hearing you say is that you're
sorry, 1 minute. Could whosoever is the host mute that guy? I'm not hearing. I'm trying to listen over whatever noise is happening there. So if I don't know whoever is the host, thank you.
Yep, we just got that. Thanks so much.
Perfect. So Pedro asked if so accommodations and modifications and how to work through grading with that. I'm going to go back one slide to review that accommodations do not change the content of the instruction. They do not change the expectations for the learner, and they do not reduce the requirements. So I should not have to grade that student differently because I'm expecting all the same thing. I might just provide an opportunity to read in Braille, an opportunity to sit in a different chair, an opportunity to take a test in a quiet environment. Those are the things that I might provide. So I'm not changing anything they learn. With your teaching in a classroom with 30 students, this is a little bit more challenging, but thinking about, do you have a teacher office? The student could sit separately. Could the student wear headphones if they're, noise canceling headphones during a test? What are the things that we can work through to ensure that that student is able to demonstrate what they know, what they've learned and know, without messing up your day? That's part of it. The difference, modifications will change the grading system, but so Modifications will require that you have adjusted it, and then you base it based on what they're able to do then. So as I mentioned, in Florida, we reduced that level of expectation. And now we graded on what they're able to do then. Go back. Why does this keep moving on its own? Let me see if this opens and if we have anybody in there. Pedro, did that help a little bit?
Yes, definitely. Well, I just wanted to mention it now so that then we can be able to understand it more in detail. So definitely, I do understand the goal is for accommodation is equity versus the goal in modification is accessibility. So
Love, yeah. I love mathematicians. They can phrase things so much more succinctly than I can. So that was well done. Oh, and look, we're starting to get some accommodations on this. Excellent. So extended time, such as to complete assignment, that might go in the time. This one we can move over here. Yep, there we go. Pair the child with a buddy. I'm sorry, I moved it and it messed everything up. I apologize. I guess.
Betsy, are
Hold
you
on.
able to put a link for the Padlet directly into the chat?
Let me see if I can.
If you can copy it right from, yours and put it in the chat.
Maybe I can.
Right down a little bit where it says.
Okay, I can't, I guess, because, copy link. Okay, got it. Let me see if that works. And now if I can actually get to the chat. Cut this down. See if that works.
Yep, that worked.
Thank you. And while you're looking at this, someone put a great question in the chat. So if one person has to run 100-minute, 10 seconds, 100 meters, to get the gold medal, and the other just needs to walk to get the same 100-meter in 10 hours to get the gold medal. And that's actually a modification. That is not an accommodation. So great question on that. Where it might sound a little bit different, but a great one to have there as well for a good question.
An online interactive quiz is a great one for the assessment, the learning environment. Pair the child with a peer buddy. Absolutely. Again, don't let the peer do the work, but have them support. And we know that that peer actually learns more by re-explaining it. And we also know that the buddy that's receiving that explanation has heard something now in two different ways, the teacher explanation and now the student, and that deepens their learning. So both students benefit from that. Use manipulatives, absolutely. I hope that's our math teacher telling us, yes, manipulatives are used. We know that directions come with manipulatives. In the US, we find that manipulatives were taken out of classrooms for a while because there was tended to be like throwing them and those kinds of things. And then that hurt our girl learners from learning math because they do very well with manipulatives. But all students benefit from different manipulatives. And there's everything from virtual manipulatives to actual objects. Our students are our students with ASD might have a fixation on airplanes, and why couldn't you count little toy airplanes in math rather than just dots? So those kind of things can also then help be used to engage our students. And again, I know I'm talking about high school, but we can level all of this up to meet the needs of our high school students. Written instruction along with verbal, absolutely. It's interesting to me how this concept of providing both all the time is really key. I watch TV now. I watch a lot of BritBox or British TV, and oh my gosh, I absolutely need the closed caption below because the accent is different. And so I find that that's very beneficial to me, although that's for the deaf and hard of hearing, not for somebody like myself, but that little bit of change is so supportive of me. And so that accommodation is helping me, because accommodations typically help all learners rather than just the student. Let's see. Yes, videos, tutorials, excellent way for our students who need extra practice to go onto those. Accommodate student by writing his notes and providing one-on-one time for test. very helpful. And you don't have to write his notes totally. You could provide guided notes where you write part of it and then they have to write some part of it in, or you could frame it or use a graphic organizer. But yeah, or they could have a peer buddy that writes the notes and they share and they go over them together, because just having somebody else writing them might not be helpful for them. Allow a child with SLD to do oral report, yep, or artistic showcase instead of a written report. And that's key. And as long as my goal, and I think this goes to Pedro's point, as long as my assessment is not assessing the written work, then, but it's comprehension, then I can use that. But if I wanted to assess written work, then I might need to have them type it or do something else. So giving different options to choose from. Oh gosh, this is so great. Options are important. Choice is key, and I'm going to reiterate that again later. Writing graphic organizers and sentence starters. I love it. These are great. So you guys have the answers. What about extra time after classes? Again, I don't know your policies, but I think depending on the student, the motivation, the communication with parents, the talk with your principal, all of those things, we could think of ways to provide extra time. Peer-to-peer support, we've had that. Use of pictures or cartoons to teach vocabulary, absolutely. Provide less questions. Now, when we provide less questions, what happens? Is that an accommodation or a modification? Somebody call out.
Modification.
It might be a modification. Again, if sometimes teachers, as teachers, we overdo it. Why give students 20 math problems when 10 will do it? So thinking about that. But so the other way to look at that is, we know some students excel and they like it. Maybe everyone does 10, and those students who are gifted or need enrichment or like it, we can provide 10 additional as an option, but not be detrimental to the other students. So that's another way to think about that. So then it wouldn't be necessarily a deficit accommodation and making it a modification for our students. Okay, I think we have the gist of this, and I'm really excited about your responses. That was amazing. Let's see if I can get back to my PowerPoint now. We might be able to do that. Okay, great. All right, so I'm just quick review. We understood all of these methods and materials. So you can see down the side, the acronym is MALTS again, MALTS. So the methods and materials might be use sensory tools such as exercise bands. Does everybody know what those exercise bands are? We can put them on the legs of a chair and let our kids wiggle all day long. And if you've got tennis balls on the bottom, guess what? They're not disturbing the other kids, but they're getting their wiggles out, which is really key, especially when they've got class 7 straight periods a day and no time for break, and that's what we've done in the US. We've gotten rid of PE. We loop those around the chair legs, and that's very helpful. We can do work with fewer items per page, or line capture responses on an audio recorder. Those are different ways we can work for assignments and assessments. We can take a test in a different environment, fewer distractions. We can take frequent breaks. Oh, so I want to go back to that one real quick. And I don't know, my PowerPoint's on its own. We can take frequent breaks, such as after completing a worksheet, giving an if then. I think Sandra mentioned this yesterday. If you finish this page on your worksheet, you get a 3-minute break. Then you come back and do page 2. So those kinds of breaks are helpful for our students with ADHD. They need that. But they're also, sometimes helpful for all students. Some students like to plow through, and others need that little bit of, I need a mental break. And then we can provide verbal prompts for vocabulary words, or we can use CC devices, or the PECS, which is that picture exchange communication system. Right. So modifications, just wanted to fly through here. They are, let me see if I can keep it here, is a change to the instruction, and it alters. That means it changes the content and the student performance expectation. So again, these are the students that we talked about earlier. These are going to be your red flags. You've tried all possible accommodations. You've ensured that your instruction is best practice. You've tried multiple means to engage these students with different ways to have them access the general education curriculum, and for some reason they're still not progressing, you may need to think about modifying the curriculum for them. And for us in the US, once we start modifying that curriculum, we usually go through a tiered system of support to make sure that we've tried everything. And then we talk about the need for special education services. And then we start modifying our expectations some for them. So I wanted to go through that to say, so if there's some special needs, they might come with modifications, and then you would get those modifications and support your student in the class with those. So when we modify, why is it important? It's important because when we provide access to the general education curriculum and a means for our students to participate, it still provides them with that high expectation at their cognitive level. And that's why we want to do that. We don't want to assume that they can't learn. We want to provide them access to the curriculum, but we don't want to provide them with all Fs because they're not meeting the same criteria as everyone else. So they have that participation, they have access, they're learning in an environment that's supportive of high expectation, and it increases their overall learning. So I'm not assuming they can't learn. I'm just adjusting it a little bit to make sure that they feel some positive reinforcement for their learning. So modifications change what the children are expected, what the students are expected to learn and demonstrate. They might have partial completion of requirements. They're going to have expectations that are less complex and below grade level. And their alternative curriculum goals is what we do in the US using those access point standards. So if I have something that I want, and there's a little picture here that shows you can do the content, the quantity, the performance, and that one I kind of a little iffy because again, depending on how we expect, I can give them a verbal response if it's written, that might be that performance level. And then the level of support, providing a lot of prompting. Some of our students, we need to hand over hand support because they're that low functioning, some of our really complex students. But going back to the expectations below grade level. So if I have a high school student who's performing well below and I'm doing modifications, everybody in the class is reading one book and I give them a low level primer, that would not be an appropriate accommodation. I want to make sure that that content is close to the content that the other students are accessing in terms of the subject area and what they're looking at. So if they're reading a text on something and you know, an important concept in Belize history, I want to make sure I'm providing that, but at a much lower complex level. I don't want to give them a baby book and say, oh, you're a high school student, but you can't adjust this. I want to make sure that the materials are appropriate for their age. And so you know, that's part of that dignity that we provide all of our students. Another way to look at it is through the content, which I just mentioned, making sure that it aligns with the student's age and level. So this acronym CASE, we want to make sure that it's age level appropriate, that it takes into account their abilities. So looking at what are those students' assets? We have students sometimes who, you know, have gifts in some areas, but they might be very low functioning. So we want to capture those assets and abilities and use those strengths to guide their interests and work with them. We want to make sure that we have the right standards. So if they need to be on access points or lower level standards, we'll do that. And then that evaluation, as we mentioned before, is going to be at a different level. So this is you know, they are graded differentially than our other students, but these are students who are in the system and are receiving mandated modifications that we do in the US through our IEPs, and you may as well. So,
Dr. Dune, there was a
yes.
series of responses about the fidget toys or the bands, the exercise bands on the chair, and
Okay.
someone made a comment on this. This is what the access points in your curriculum are for. You might want to clarify with the access points and having fidget toys or any of that, how it's more
The
about
fidget toys
standards.
do not change my expectations. They do not change my what they're learning. They just provide a means to release that energy during class so they don't become a disturbance to others. Does that make sense?
And I'll add here too, I think the context of the question in the chat around fidgets is that a lot of schools don't allow them.
Okay.
in their setting. And so something that I kind of put in there is that instead of thinking about our traditional fidget toys, poppers or things like that that you think of, and Betsy gave the example of an exercise band around the chair. That is something that is considered a fidget and would be helpful in this situation that would be specific for a student with a disability. Again, these are going to be things that perhaps all could benefit from, but if it is not allowed in your schools or in your classrooms, and I do see there's some difference, it really does depend on your school, your classroom, etc. There are certainly ways to think about this specific to your students with challenging behaviors.
I also think schools are going to have to revisit what they allow and do not allow, considering the disability legislation says that we should be able to provide reasonable accommodations for students. So while
Absolutely. I agree so much with what Ms. Alt made us saying. It's so important that we start to revisit our expectations if we're not changing the learning goals.
So we have to recognize that the education rules is being revisited right now, but the supreme law of the land has been adjusted. Yeah, my internet has been really bad. I'm so sorry if I'm cutting in and out. It's the internet.
Someone
Okay,
commented that they believe their classroom needs massive restructuring. And I think maybe we should point out there's a lot of little things you can do, not a massive restructuring to support our students. So there are probably some big things that need to be restructured, but there's a lot of little things we
Little
can
things.
do to help.
And that's where we're going next. We're going to get into this teaching heuristic where we can just make some adjustments to our lesson plans, and that will help. So just recap here, modifications change the expectations for learning, and they reduce the requirements of the task for our students. But again, we want to make sure that we're doing the least dangerous assumption before we begin these modifications. Sorry. All
Can I
right. So
say
these are
something?
yeah.
Just to know the importance of knowing and having paperwork, documentation, and everything. Because once we know about the child, then there is when we can actually make and decide whether we are accommodating or we are modifying. To my understanding and through my experience, it is important to know that modification and accommodation will give different outcomes, especially because, for example, if I am modifying, my way of assessing what I am teaching shouldn't change. It is only things like scaffolding ideas and activities that I should do so that the child is being assessed the same way. But probably, as you mentioned, if my child has visual difficulties, I can enlarge the font. That doesn't affect, and probably like you mentioned, we can include this for everyone. I mean, it wouldn't hurt for my print to be in size 14 instead or 16. Probably everyone will benefit from that. It is also important to know that if I modify, then even the years probably the child will spend in school will even change, because then there we are dealing with modification of what we are teaching to the child. Probably this is a child who will only take 5 subjects instead of 8 rather than the 8 because of the disabilities that this person might show. And there is where we need to understand the difference between accommodation and modification. I know that as a teacher, it will require a little more effort on our behalf, but at the end, if we want the best for a child, we can do those things.
Elizabeth,
Thank
that was very, very well said, and you're absolutely right. So modifications, you're changing those expectations, you're reducing the assessment, and you're changing all of that, but very well stated. I just have a couple scenarios if you want to determine if it's an accommodation or modification, just to check up. So I would let one person call out each response after you've read this. So the first one is to prepare for an upcoming lesson on character development and plot of the book Becca Lamb. Miss Garcia asked her student to read the novel. Understanding that Adriana, one of her students, has difficulty reading grade level text, she assigns her a shorter, abridged version of the same novel at a lower Lexile level. Is this an accommodation or modifications? One person call out, please.
You've got a lot of people responding in the chat, lots and lots of chats.
I
Accommodations
say
are what
accommodation.
everyone is saying.
Okay, she's
I
reading.
say accommodation.
This one, I guess at reading the shorter abridged version, if it's the same content, but just on her Lexile level, but if we're really like just abridging it and that it's at a very basic reading level, then it would be a modification. So just scenario 2, Jose, a
Hey,
student with
Betsy, do you want to
ADHD.
just go right back because I think you'll want to explain why a little bit more that's a modification. Most people are putting it's an accommodation. So I think
Right.
there's a
So
little,
again, it just depends on the level of the book and how, what I would do is when we change the reading level, you know, if we just take out the difficult vocabulary or pre-teach them, that might be one thing. But if it's, you know, if it's a 100-page novel and the student's now reading 20 pages, and it's like it's more of a modification. But if it's just, you know, I think growing up, a lot of times students read the Cliff Notes, and now they have different ways to access this. And so a lot of us did this. And I think that this is one of those ones that I could go either way. But again, depending on how much I'm changing, if I really, I'm thinking too, like, stripped the vocabulary, stripped some of the meaning, but they're getting the same idea, and that's the point of some of the, including our students with modifications. They're getting the same idea about what the book is about at a very low level, you know, without the complexity of the understanding. Then it becomes a modification. But if they're getting the complexity of it and they're understanding, but that it was just the vocabulary that was the barrier, then it's absolutely an accommodation. I'm sorry, that one is a little tricky. I didn't think of that, you know, that when I put that in there.
and before you move on, I do think we have someone that raised their hand.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I did raise my hand. I wanted to understand this very well. The scenario is, to me, is modification because I think the child is reading shorter version of the book. So the child is not getting the same content that other people are getting. So it could be accommodation if to say the child is reading the same book content that others are reading, but the teacher gave more time. So I just want to know if I am correct with my interpretation.
Yeah, so if it's a much shorter thing and she's just doing it so that it's almost like it's a cartoon version. We have this in the US where we have the class might be reading Shakespeare and the language is such that it's very complex and it's written in Old English, but we can provide a child, keep them in that class, and the modification could be that child in the class could have almost like a picture book of Shakespeare. The vocabulary is very low level. They're not getting the Elizabethan English. They're not getting that content, but they understand Romeo and Juliet was a love story, and that's all our expectation is. We want them to know it was a love story and just the basics that Shakespeare wrote it. That is a modification. We've provided that student with a low level to access, to be in the class with everyone else. They can talk about the story on their level, but it's not the same complexity. And that's why I originally, you know, made it so it is at that level. You're absolutely correct. It is a modification. And I hope that explanation helped a little bit. But thank you. That's correct. Okay, scenario 2. Jose is a student with ADHD and he struggles to stay focused and to organize his time. When his teacher assigns a long-term project, she breaks the task into smaller pieces, requiring Jose to complete each of them by a given date. Is that an accommodation or modification?
Accommodation.
Absolutely. And, you know, all students may benefit from this. And I used to do this in my courses. I'd say, okay, we have an end of the term project. It's due at the end of the semester. And most of the students are able to do that. But then I realized some students just get lost in that. So now I break all my projects up into smaller pieces that, you know, so I make sure that they're on the right track early on, and I don't wait until students fail at the end of the semester. So
Can
I
I
think
add?
go ahead.
just to say that it is accommodation, and here is where we see the teacher using time as a scaffolding tool,
Absolutely.
breaking the big assessment into smaller chunks, but at the same time, the child is getting the same content than the others, except that accommodation has been made so that the child completes the work in a longer time.
Thank you for restating that perfectly. Okay, scenario 3. Annabella's class has been working on multiplication. Although the focus has been on multiplying 3-digit numbers by 2-digit numbers, Annabelle has been working on the basic multiplication facts. For the test, her teacher creates a different test with different types of problems. Is this an accommodation or modification?
Modification.
Absolutely, absolutely. She's learning different content. Carlos has a learning disability. As such, he has difficulty processing the information his teacher covers in class, and consequently, he's unable to take meaningful notes. To help him be successful, the teacher provides him with a study guide for each lesson. Accommodation or modification?
Accommodation.
Absolutely.
Accommodation, yes.
Accommodation, correct. Okay, you know what, I'm going to,
And Betsy, you've just got a lot of people still responding. So if you want to just give a second for them to catch up from question, I think 3 and 4.
And then I guess while we're waiting, someone asked how they sign up for the next 2 sessions.
Yep, we're
For
going to
the
address that at the end.
PD, and I figured that just
Yep.
put that. And then someone also commented that in Belize the curriculum is like a Bible, and that and a teacher could be viewed negatively or incompetent if he or she is not at par with the lesson plans or at pace with other teachers. How would you address that?
I'm going to go into lesson planning. I think I'll skip these 2 slides.
Yeah, will you go back? Someone's asking if you could go back to scenario 3 for a review.
So in number 3, Annabelle is doing less problems and she's doing out at a lower level of complexity. She's just learning her basic times tables, and the others are doing 3-digit by 2-digit multiplications.
So that's modification.
Correct. This. All right, I'm going to introduce this. I was teaching heuristic and then leave you, because I think this is important. We get into lesson planning and what it means. And as I mentioned earlier, UDL is a whole course in itself. When you have access to the PowerPoint, there's a link to UDL. But so our teaching heuristic is looking at, if you look at this graphic organizer in a way, this is, it lists some instructional strategies, actually 6 of them. And I want to make sure that you understand what each of these terms mean. So as you look at that circle, are there any words on that graphic that you do not know the meaning of? Everybody's good?
Just give it an extra couple seconds for them to
Okay.
look at it and respond.
Sorry, I thought there were.
Yeah, I
Oh,
would
that
need some accommodation. It's kind of small on my computer to read them.
Oh. Oh, okay, there we go. Is that helpful?
So thank you. Great.
Yes, that's an important accommodation. We need to be able to see. So the concepts are explicit, choice, interactive, contextual, feedback, and collaborative. And this graphic means that if we include all of these elements in one lesson, then we affect this target. The bullseye in this is the student. So if we include these elements in each lesson that we planned, we're going to affect the student learner most significantly. So what does this mean? So for example, explicit is ensuring that we're making our content understandable. And we do these through several things. We can task analyze, we can scaffold, I know we've heard that word. We can use graphic organizers, we've heard that. We can use visual and verbal examples. We can use examples and non-examples. We use direct instruction, and guided practice. Those elements make our lesson explicit. In the US, we have a thing called I do, you do, we do. So the teacher does it, and then she does it with the students together. So she introduces the concept, she does it with the students together, and then she allows them to practice on their own in the you do. The next is choice. Choice provides students with limited options. And the reason I said limited is because you're not going to say, okay, do whatever you want. You're going to say, okay, you have A, B, or C. These are your options, or, you have a choice of topic if it could be, or a choice of some, we're providing students with choice. And especially at the elementary level, we do limited, very limited choice because we want to keep our students, in the parameters of our lesson. But we understand when we provide our students with choice, it increases their motivation and buy-in. Oh my gosh, I get to choose what I do. The students get excited. It also feels very much more democratic. The teacher is not an authoritarian. She's letting me decide, and we can build that. So make that choice really feel powerful for the students, and that enhances their self-efficacy and autonomy when they find that they have some buy-in and some relevant and can make relevance and meaning out of the topic. And I heard choice a lot in that Padlet that we did. So I appreciate that. Okay, this is the term that I really wanted to define for you because I think this is the key term here, interactive. And this kind of goes back to that UDL. When we make an interactive doesn't mean with working with other people necessarily, although that's part of interactive, that's also collaborative. Interactive means that we provide students with multiple ways to interact with the content. Interactive instruction includes differentiated opportunities, multi-sensory practice, repeated practice, opportunities to work with peers, anything that you do to provide some hands-on or discussions, applications, experiences with that content. For a long time during COVID, we did some flipped classroom where we provided some readings and videos before class. We talked about them during class, and then they did some post things. That makes a lesson interactive. The more that we can do with that content before our students, before the direct teaching, the many, many ways to interact with that content. So, and we'll show some examples in a minute. The next one is our contextual. Contextual instructions ensures that the content connects to the student's schema. Again, I think I gave an example of learning trigonometry, but having no connection to my schema. I can do some formulas, but I can't connect it. So I needed that real world application. So the more contextual we can make our lessons, providing examples and connecting it to prior knowledge and building their understanding and making it real world, that really then connects and sticks with our students. So their learning is more relevant and meaningful. And then, as I said, when I talked about breaking projects up, but this happens to do in a lesson as well. If you start a lesson and you go on all the way through, and at the end you ask the students to do something, and we don't take care of misconceptions mid-lesson, or we don't check on students prior to providing the assignment, we don't know what they're doing. So again, as teachers, you're probably walking around the classroom, answering questions as you go. That's all part of that ongoing feedback. And it's really important to provide timely, immediate feedback so that our students, we can facilitate that misunderstanding. And misunderstandings are good. I mean, we learn most through our mistakes. I mean, we make a mistake. Well, okay, let's show me how you did that. Let's work through that. So misunderstandings are not a problem, but we want to work through them. We want to encourage our students, support them, facilitate that on-the-spot decision-making for a teacher, because if I realize I'm walking around, I've just taught a concept and nobody's getting it, that's an important point to say, I need to reteach rather than continue going with this lesson and giving them the independent practice because students aren't ready for it. And that's when we might have to adjust the timing of our own lesson. So that feedback provides stuff not only for the students, information for the students for us to know, to fix those misconceptions, but also as us as a teacher to guide our learning and to understand that we may need to back up or reteach or something. So that's why that feedback is so important. And then if our lessons are collaborative, we need to provide opportunities to work together. We can share our misunderstandings, we can clarify, we can build consensus. Even oftentimes I find that As you noticed today, that Esther did a beautiful job summarizing, Pedro did a beautiful job summarizing, putting into words things that I had said. So that collaborative, excuse me, rewording is really key. Grace, you have a question?
Hi, good morning. I just wanted
morning.
to share a lesson that I covered with my students. We were well, I'm a science teacher, and we were dealing with water pollution was our topic, right? Or subtopic. And I gave them, I actually like using the choice board with my students. And they were allowed to do it in a poem. They were allowed to do drama. They were allowed to do a music, a song or something like that from it. And man, I really, really, really enjoyed that lesson. Because in Belize, there's something we call punta. These students, I had them in groups, so they were collaborating. They were also they used the tables as drums. They came up with lyrics, you know, what is pollution? What do we do to prevent it? How can we, you know, all of these things. It was so good. And we had some that did drama as well, some in poetry. And when you do these things, you really get to see some of your students' strengths. Because at times,
Grace, I have a question for you real quick. So
sure.
based on that lesson on pollution versus your typical science lesson, tell me the student learning results. Which one was better?
This one, they're real.
Absolutely.
They
Yes.
were 100% engaged because what happened, we had a double period. So I gave them the first period to prepare. And the second period is when each of their groups would come up and they did their different presentation. Man, it was really good. I really enjoyed that lesson, and so did they.
Grace, it sounds like you've done some of the assignment that will be due for this module as well. So congratulations. That's a great example, and exactly, it's hard to put it in a PowerPoint, the lesson, but I'll show you what I had next to do that. I love that.
Okay.
So we want to engage students in the learning process. And one of the first ways we do that, we don't want to make our goal for the lesson a mystery. Your lesson was on pollution. That wasn't a mystery. The students knew it. So you have to communicate that learning goal up front. And then we want to provide opportunities to facilitate the learning experience for our students. We want to include all the elements of that instructional heuristic, and we want to empower expert learners. And these are ways that we can start that learning process and ensure that everyone can learn. So let me show you. So here's a teacher. She's going to write the goal of the lesson on the board. You can write it on the board. You can post it on a PowerPoint. You can ask students questions about it throughout the lesson to make sure we know, what are we learning today? Oh, about pollution. What are the causes of pollution? And we're going to keep reiterating that so our students understand our expectations, but also what their goal is. Why are they learning this? And then we want to facilitate that experience, providing activities, multiple activities to engage them in that content. As Grace just mentioned, she provided songs, she provided drumming, she provided opportunity for them to write about it, to do it. All those things provide a different way to ingrain it in our different students. And it makes it fun. Learning should not be fun. To learn should be a lot of fun. So we want to make sure that we do that. So we include that why we're learning this. And then we want to make sure that we provide multiple means of engagement, representation, and action expression during the lesson. That all relates to UDL. So before the class, we might provide introduction to the concept. Here at home tonight, right? If you have access, watch this video. In class, let's work with each other. Let's work on this assignment together. And then we have these students that like to go on. We can do some post-class assignments to extend learning, but wanting to make sure that we facilitate opportunities for our students learning, as Grace did in her example. And then we want to make sure that we include that instructional heuristic. And the goal is to include as many of these elements into your lesson. And I listened to Grace, and I think she hit every one of those 6 elements. And the reason we do that is it optimizes our student learning, and it fosters student learner agency by being collaborative, providing that choice, letting them know that they're part of the learning experience. I'm not dumping it into your head. You have to interact with the content to learn. So I need to engage you and actively include you. So that's why we want to make sure we include the heuristic. And you actually said, here, I have a choice board. Choose how you want to present this material. Do you want to do a drama? Do you want to write something? These are all important to include. That, again, empowers the learners, builds student agency. I know I'm going really fast. I have a train to go to. Okay. And I just wanted to share one of our favorites. I know this contextually does not fit in the schema.
Please go back to the last slide.
Pardon?
Please go back to the last slide just for 10 seconds.
Sure. And you will have access to this PowerPoint. I do apologize for rushing. I do have another engagement after this, so I'm rushing through at the end, and I do apologize. I appreciate your patience with me. Okay.
I got it.
Right,
Go
so,
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay,
Got it.
yeah, just providing choice. Yep. And this is a graphic organizer, and I know that there was talk about what graphic organizers are and how we can use them. This one creates a contextual understanding of a paragraph writing. And again, I know in the US, hamburgers are very prolific. You know, you can't go anywhere without getting a hamburger. So it's very much connected to a student's schema. And then we have all these details. So we know that a topic sentence and a closing sentence are very similar, that they should sum up. So this gives, when we teach through this, it gives students understanding. But so I'll provide this as my anchor chart at the beginning of a lesson when I teach the parts of a paragraph. And then I will, and I know this is very hard to read, so I'm going to go, but this is a lesson plan. And as you can see, the heuristic, that teaching heuristic is color coded, and I've color coded it throughout. So I use that graphic organizer. I introduced my lesson. I said, today we're going to be learning about the parts of a paragraph, how to write a paragraph. So everybody's clear. I want to make sure today we're learning about this. And then I'm going to ask everyone to engage. Please share with me your favorite burger. Do you like chicken? Do you like beef? Do you like veggie? Or you have a totally different? Maybe you like banh mi or a taco. So you can share about what you would put in and describe those things. Describe how luscious that you like cilantro in it, or, you know, whatever your ingredients are, you want to describe that. And that engages our students. It hooks them into the lesson. It brings that buy-in. Then I'm going to explicitly go through that anchor chart that I just showed you of the graphic organizer. Then I'm going to move from the teacher modeling of how to write, to the guided practice where we work together to write one together. And I'm going to provide specific feedback as I go through that, clarifying misunderstanding. Yes, the topic sentence is not exactly the same, but it summarizes exactly what you said. So you could, but it's better to provide a rewritten sentence of that. So I allow the students opportunity to make mistakes so we can learn from them. I allow student choice in the process, and that builds that buy-in. So again, they can talk about a different type of sandwich if they want, but getting into a way to describe it, that choice is theirs. And then I'm going to provide a range of activities within this lesson. So as Grace mentioned, I have videos here that might show how to write a hamburger paragraph, and it's going to be,
this is Mr.
sorry,
B.
okay.
On today's
I
lesson,
won't
we're
share
going
that.
to learn how to write a paragraph. Yes, that's right. The burger method.
Oh, sorry, I've lost my PowerPoint again. No, dear. Now, where is it? Let's stop that. And oh no, I'm about to lose everything. Oh, sorry, I have lost the PowerPoint. Okay, and then I have another video of a song here about writing a paragraph. So again, if we provide all these things during a lesson. I know it's a really bad song. Mrs. Brown's right. Okay, and I've lost it again. Okay, and then, so we're going to go through the lesson. We'll go through the graphic organizer. We'll go through the video, or they can take the video home for those that need more time or need more interaction or don't get it. I can provide the song because sometimes that will stick in the head about how to write a paragraph. And then doing all these different things, I'm going to allow them to work in group. All those different activities make it interactive. And then I'm going to do a formative assessment, but to make sure students kind of get the gist of the paragraph before moving on. And I've got, I think,
someone asked, what do you do for students who can't spell or write?
So is my goal here that they write or that they understand? So I have to go back to my learning objective. Is my objective that they understand the parts of a paragraph or that they write a paragraph? And if my students are on modifications, that's a totally different story. But if the goal of this lesson, the lesson objective is that they must write a paragraph, then I can allow them to write a paragraph, but that doesn't mean they can't type it or they can't have a scribe, because they would still be demonstrating the parts of the paragraph, but they can't physically write. I could have them speech to text. So there's different things. And then just what I think this anchor chart was different. I wanted to show the one I would give the students. So they had the visual anchor chart, but then they would fill out this one on their own. Sorry, this, and that was a great question. And let me see. So, and then at the end, I'm going to give them another choice. They can choose their choice of topic within limitations. You know, I'll say, I would like you to write about your favorite movie or whatever that's going to be. So that's how and I think, Grace, you've done a great job explaining how you did this in a lesson. So your assignment for this module is to demonstrate your understanding of the 6 elements in the instructional heuristic. I want you to think about how this supports accommodations and modifications, and then how this fits into the least dangerous assumption. By including all these elements in our lessons, it helps us to meet our students' learning needs. So because choice is important, you have a choice. You can work in a team and create a lesson plan for your grade and subject area. So if there are 5 people on here that are all teach science at the 10th grade level and you have a certain concept, do it together, because guess what? That fosters your learning. You could just create your own lesson plan on your own on your favorite topic. You could create a pamphlet for teachers at your school who are unable to attend this training, explaining the instructional heuristic. You could color code, so Grace can take her existing lesson and color code it to show me that she's included these elements and that she's added the missing ones in case she left any out, which I don't think so. You could create a podcast for new teachers explaining why each element is important, or you can do the old pencil and paper and write a 1-page paper about why these elements of the instructional heuristic are important. So that is your assignment for this module. And also it's written on there's a worksheet that was provided in the TLI that you should be able to have access to. How is everybody doing? You okay? I know that was a lot.
Excuse me, morning.
Good morning.
Do you mean that everyone will do all this? 1, 2, 3.
No, the choice. See here?
This is one.
You will do, yeah, you'll do one. Only one, because I want you to have choice. And I was trying to demonstrate how I made this lesson explicit. I hoped it was a little bit collaborative. It was very minimally interactive, but I tried to provide context as much, and we provided feedback ongoing. So the last element was choice. You have your choice. Do one. So you can take a lesson that you've already written and then just color code it to demonstrate this. But this will be your assignment to for your TLI, for your learning in this module. And as you do it, again, I want you to go back to that least dangerous assumption, thinking about why that's important. So,
and before you go away from that slide really quickly, I just want to share 2 things. So one, LP is lesson plan. I know we love to use different acronyms. So LP is lesson plan. So if you have an existing lesson plan, or, however that might look for you. And then the other piece, a couple of people were asking, are we working in teams? This would be an option that would be great if you are here in this training with others from your grade level, or if others from your own school, if you're there with others from a subject area, you've got friends. This is a great thing to just have you bounce ideas off of one another. It is by no means something that you must do. And so the assignment, thank you, Ms. Cooper, is said it is on TLI under day 2, assessment, accommodation, and modification. So appreciate letting us know about that.
Thank you, Dr. Ivanovich.
Is it possible to share email? So that's
my
a
email
great
is here.
question. For the other contacts.
Oh, okay.
for other folks that are I'm assuming Lynn means for others here. Elizabeth, Betsy's email is right there for you for sure. And Sandy shared hers yesterday. We can certainly put them in the chat as well. And then hopefully you'll be here with us on Thursday and Friday for additional referencing the assignment for module 1. We're going to come back and talk about that in just a second. So any other, yep, great. Everyone is saying
Dr.
choose one. You
Ivanovich,
just
can
choose
take
one.
Can you take control of my of the PowerPoint now, or no? You're not able
No,
to?
I won't be able to.
Okay, because
on your
I just had those posts from yesterday for you guys to discuss, but I do have to check
hop
out
off.
now.
No
I
problem. Go
apologize.
right ahead.
Yeah. So I just there's my reference, but this is already going to be up in the LLM, and you can just discuss those 3 questions if you like, or however you want to do it. But these were questions from yesterday, and I just had some ideas to sharing. But they're in there if either Ms. Almeida can pull it up, or
I'll get it. Yep.
okay, perfect. All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks.
Thanks, Betsy. And Betsy
right.
does have to run. Christy also had to run, so Ms. Cooper is here with us to help. And she did put any questions regarding the TLI. You can contact her at that number there. Lots of questions here, just in general. I'm gonna take away your sharing right now, Betsy, because
I'm
you're still
sorry.
sharing.
I didn't realize I
So
was. Sorry. Oh, I'm trying to stop sharing. There we go. Gotcha. Okay.
there you go. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, so we do know today's a little bit shorter, about a half an hour shorter than yesterday, but we do know you have a lot happening. So before we let you go and kind of do our wrap up, there are a couple of things I see still in the chat. Oh, so I'm sure there will be an opportunity for you to upload. That will be coming on that TLI page under day 2 assessment and accommodation, similar to how it is on day 1. Yep, there will be time for your task to be uploaded exactly, and perhaps some from yesterday. So we did want to give you some time for that. I believe I got all of the questions as they were coming through quickly. Are there any folks that had a question? So I know there's 200 and almost 280 folks here, so I could have very easily missed a question. And Ms. Cooper just said, you will have 2 weeks to complete the assignments. So do not feel like you need to rush and get that done today. We certainly hope that you're able to take some time to reflect and really think about how you would use these different pieces within your classroom setting. Sessions 3 and 4, no, you do not have to have links if you choose to color coordinate. You can just put those different color coordination pieces in there. Great question, Michelle. Sessions 3 and 4. I know we were getting TLI to see if we could open up those slots for you all to register for Thursday and Friday if you were not already previously registered. I'm not sure, Ms. Cooper, do you have an update on that? I know Christy had to step away, but we'll keep our eye on the chat to see if there there will be a PDF of the PowerPoint. Likely today with the recording of this will be posted on TLI as well. I do believe it's within the day. It's usually pretty quick. Your folks are awesome and really fast about that. So I believe yesterday's is already posted. And if you've already registered for Thursday and Friday, oh great. Thursday and Friday will be open to enrollment up to 300 people, which is wonderful. So you should be able to do that. Check that. To confirm, is it all or one scenario? You're just picking one scenario for tomorrow from yesterday's. Great clarifying question.
Okay, yeah, 1 minute, 1 moment. Good morning.
Good morning.
So yesterday's one assignment as well. So there's 2 assignments, one for each day?
Correct. Each day will have its
Okay.
separate assignments. Yes.
Okay. I lost my train of thought. I'll get back to you one second.
No problem. We're here for that. Great clarifying questions. I'm glad you're asking them. Just to give you a little bit of a background too. So today and yesterday were really more of an overview on disabilities. So just disabilities in general. What are the disability categories is what we covered yesterday with Ms. DeWitt, and then with Dr. Dune today covering the big ideas around accommodations, modifications, and our teaching practices. We will be shifting a little bit for Thursday and Friday. And those, so if a lot of you have already pre-registered, super awesome that you have. And if you haven't, hopefully they'll be able to open it. I'm not sure. I'm seeing some questions about that. So maybe Ms. Cooper can look to see if it's open. But it is going to be about behavior. So we're going to be talking about the basics of behavior. What is behavior? What does it look like in our classrooms? And then we're going to go through 5 different elements in classroom management, really thinking about behavior and prevention. So we're not going to get specific into disability categories. That was yesterday and today. And then Thursday and Friday, we're going to start focusing in on behavior and management for inclusive classroom structures. So how are we as the educators thinking about understanding what is behavior and how can we make sure we have a classroom management plan in place that is preventative to be an inclusive classroom for all of our learners. Thursday and Friday will be the same time. Yes, you will get credit hours for, I believe I saw earlier, 4 credit hours for each session. So yesterday and today's 1 session. It's considered 1 session because you did have to be here yesterday and today for that. And then Thursday and Friday is 1 session. So we're just kind of clumping those together. And I do believe that those are 4. And Ms. Cooper says, if you were not able to register yet for Thursday and Friday, please check back this afternoon. I know Ms. Almeida Christie said that she did up the Zoom to 500 available licenses. So maybe they're under works on getting that because I do believe TLI said 300. So great that we have so many folks interested in behavior for that.
Okay. So let me get some correction. So for a cousin, we were here yesterday and today. So shouldn't we just have the first preference for all those who took the classes yesterday and today? Because then at the enrollment, they told to sign up. I didn't see it. So is it closed, Ms. Cooper? Is it closed? Or
I'm
is it
not
on
sure.
TLI?
That's going to be a
Yeah,
question
as in
for
some people are saying that they got in, some are saying that where is it? They can't find it.
Ms. Cooper. Do you want to pop in here?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we had it capped at 300 and then we have excess requests. So we're trying to get it enrolled, increased to 500. So that's taking a little time. So for the ones who are not getting in yet, because some people are, for the ones who are not getting in yet, that's because of the excess and we're working on it. That will be cleared up this afternoon. In terms of the assignments, remember, regardless if you got in yesterday or today, because some people were able to get in to see the video and participate, but they were not officially registered. I took care of that, but remember, you're still responsible to meet all the requirements, which means being present both time. So all of that remains the same. Also with the one for Tuesday, Thursday, the same thing. You have to be assessments in order for you to debating the credit hours. We're trying to increase it because of the quality and the assignments are going to be very interactive and basically time demanding. So we're trying to increase that. We're looking at 10. We're not sure on that yet, but worst case scenario, it's going to be the 4 that was previously stated, right? So aside from that, remember to upload your assignments. If you don't see a spot for it now, we will make sure that it's there. It should be there, probably just not visible to you right now. So there are 2 assignments to review, one for yesterday, one for today. Although there are 3 scenarios. For yesterday, you're only supposed to do 1. All of this is in writing on a document that's presented. And this is a perfect example to show you that we have multiple means of communication here. We're telling you it, we're showing you it. And I even posted it on more than one place because some people look for assignments in assignments versus some people look for whatever the week's content is in that module. So I have it there. So it's not duplication, it's strategy. All right, to make sure you have
Love
it.
it.
And if all that fails and you still have questions, you have my number 610-5514. We can't be bombarding Miss Christie with all these questions, although it's relevant to you. She has other stuff to do, so bombard me with them, right? Because then for time and efficiency, share of it. Okay. For tomorrow, register. If you don't see it, you check back this afternoon. The same thing applies. You need to meet all criteria to get your credits. And for the crossword puzzle, I see you guys asking about the crossword puzzle. Again, we want multiple ways to get the information across. So they talked about it. You have the handouts, you have the little thing that we did, what was it, Kahoot, and all of that. That's different ways of reinforcing. The crossword puzzle is another way to engage and reinforce the content. Just like we do with our students, we recommend that you do it. If you can't do it or you don't want to, you just want to be the student who, if it's not to be graded, I won't do it. Well, that's your option. But we are showing by examples, multiple means of engagement, ways for you to reinforce so that it is fun. So I recommend that you do it. In terms of the assignment, I only want to see the scenario, the 1-page thing, and that's fine enough in terms of the credit. But in terms of your enrichment and what you get from the course, do the thing. Yes,
Yeah.
that's it
So
for me,
no, your
guys.
answer for folks is no, you're not submitting the puzzle. It is extra for you to relearn.
For enrichment.
Yep, enrichment.
Yes. Okay. So again, if there are no more questions, that's it for me. Remember my number 610-5514. I hope to see you all Thursday and Friday. That's it for me.
Miss Cooper.
Aye.
She
Yes.
went. One question, sorry, I don't know if you'll be able to answer
No, I'm
it.
here.
I just wanted to know, in reference to a previous workshop, if there's someone else who can we contact if we haven't received the digital certificate?
Okay, for all the TLI, for all the workshops on TLI, you have your facilitators. That is the primary means of communication. Other than that, it is up to that person who will then liaise with TLI. For example, with this class, you're not supposed to contact TLI directly. You're supposed to contact the facilitator. So then I would be the person who would work it out here. Because many times your questions don't necessarily require their input. For example, if you're not getting your certificate, it's probably because the grades weren't submitted yet, or your assignment wasn't submitted, or it's something smaller down here. So you guys,
okay, so I have checked the page and everything, and the facilitator have graded everything, but it's just that the certificate, when I go to see the certificate, it's from November 24. It's posted but with blank hours. What do I do about that? Who can I contact?
Okay, it would still be your facilitator, because in that case, what I noticed is when the course is complete, we need to submit the stuff, but then we also need to close it off, and then the credit hours are generated. So if the course is not closed off, then that won't happen. So again, your facilitator needs to close it off and then inform TLI that it's been closed off, and then that will take care of that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any more questions for me? All right. Well, thank you. Enjoy your assignment.
Thank you all so much.
Okay, I do. Yeah, I
And
do
we're
want to
gonna-
say thanks to
oh.
the facilitators and for imparting their knowledge.
Sure.
And to you, Miss Cooper, for being there with us. So, Miss Lauren.
Sure.
Excellently done, along with the others. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're excited to
Good
see hopefully all
morning.
of you Thursday and Friday. Have a
Hello,
wonderful
good morning.
blessed day.
Good morning.
Hi.
I had asked to be enrolled yesterday, and I still don't see yesterday this course on my TLI.
Okay, that needs to go to Miss Cooper. So you'll need to send that information to Miss Cooper.
610-5514.
610-1154. 610-1154 is the number for Miss Cooper?
No, 610-5514.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Welcome.
5514, Miss Cooper.
I should clarify, somebody asked a question about working in teams. All submissions are individual, but if you work with someone else on the scenarios, that would be fine. So as many as you would need to, but each submission needs to be individual.
All right. Thank you all so very much. I'm gonna stop the recording and we'll end the session, right, Miss Cooper? Anything else you need to do?
No, that's it. Thank you guys for all your assistance. You've been great. See you on Thursday.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.